Hi, today I'm going to talk about how I manage anxiety and give you some tips to help you manage anxiety. Anxiety is part of being human. It's not something bad. It's not a symptom of a disease. It's a signal. So something happened to me today, and it wasn't a major, huge thing, but it made me feel so anxious. And so immediately I did something about it because I could feel myself starting to spiral and get really negative. And then that anxiety, my heart started beating so fast, and I could feel like, oh gosh, I've got to get through a bunch of stuff still today. There's no ways that I can allow this anxiety to control me. So the first thing I did was I actually reminded myself that this anxiety is okay. This is part of being human. This is a reaction to what I have just heard. This is not something that has made me, that it makes me bad or wrong, or is a disease or a symptom of a disease, or I've got a mental illness. It's just part of being human. So I know that, but I actually had to remind myself of that. So I said that to myself, and then I said, okay, let's look at this anxiety. What is this? It's a warning signal. I'm feeling anxious. When am I feeling this? My heart is beating so fast. So in my body, my heart is beating just so fast. How's it affecting my behaviors? I look different. I'm not walking differently. I'm kind of getting irritable with my speech, the way I'm talking, and a little negative. And my perspective is, oh gosh, this is never going to come right. And then I reflected for a moment and I thought, okay, well, why has this affected me so badly? Why do I feel so anxious about this? It's making me really anxious. This is not something that should make me feel more driven, not anxious. So I was reflecting and asking myself those questions. Then I did a little mind storm. And I just wrote down some points about, okay, whatever came up, and a bunch of stuff came up. Like, I felt like a failure, imposter syndrome. Is it ever going to happen for me? And bunch of words. And like words that didn't even seem to sort of make sense in little phrases. And then I looked at that and thought, okay, let me just reconceptualize this. Let me go and recheck what's here and reconceptualize this and get this into some kind of an order. And, look at this thing differently. And then my act of reach was to actually say, okay, now instead of this incapacitating me because it could and just make me want to give up on this particular thing, I'm going to actually surge forward and I'm going to make a plan and I'm going to do this, and this, and this. And I started doing it. Now, that took me around about 3 minutes. And I've practiced doing that. And it got me to a state where I could actually record this Neurolive. I've done a meeting since I've had the little anxiety issue. I actually did 2 meetings. I did some preparation for some other things and for some research papers. I did some hard stuff. And now I'm doing some recordings and I'm recording this. And so but I know if I hadn't done that, if I hadn't applied, and I'm going to summarize all of this for you in a moment, I would have been stuck probably for a good couple of hours in a bit of a negative state, and it would have affected the quality of my work. And I wouldn't have felt great, and I wouldn't have felt that it would just made me feel horrible and would have affected everything and probably just continued into maybe the rest of the day, tomorrow, and affected that area of my life that made me feel anxious. Okay, so it was work related. Okay, so now the key word here is I managed my anxiety. I feel anxiety. Guys, anxiety is a normal part of being human. And I've had to practice learning how to manage my anxiety. I have anxiety from things that are big traumas in my life. I have anxiety from little things. I have anxiety from silly things, big things, small things, but I don't fight the anxiety. I embrace it. And then I process it and I reconceptualize it. So the key word here is I manage the anxiety. And some days I'm really good at it and some days I'm really bad. But I keep practicing. And that's what I want to encourage you to do as well. So managing anxiety means reconceptualizing those anxious thoughts when they arise. If you just see anxiety as a symptom of a disease under the current biomedical model, that is going as an illness. It can be very scary. So if you feel that anxiety, you feel your heart beating and whatever bodily sensation you get and how it maybe affects your perspective, which is pretty much your mindset. If you see that as an illness, it'll immediately incapacitate you. It'll make the anxiety worse. It won't make it better. And it's not the truth. It's not science. It's not accurate. So that anxiety is very, very, very real, but it's not an illness. And it's not something wrong with you. It is a response. And if you embrace it, it's going to help you. It's going to give you information. that experience I had this earlier on today, it gave me information. And that information helped me, not that I was happy about that information, but it helped me to feel more in control. And then it helped to drive me in the right direction. So I used the energy from that anxiety to my advantage. I'm still not happy about what triggered the anxiety, but I am not going to let that conquer me. I'm going to reuse that energy to drive me in a positive direction, in a constructive direction. Okay? So seeing it as a disease, the research shows, seeing it as a symptom of a disease will make you get stuck. It won't help you reconstruct it into something that's useful and help you. Okay, labels, when people talk about anxiety as a symptom of a mental illness or having an anxiety disorder, sometimes a label can initially give us a little bit of comfort and think, okay, well, it's just part of my brain wiring. And maybe you can feel comfortable and kind of hide behind it for a while because maybe you feel that you have quite a lot of anxiety. Well, I want to tell you that most people do have quite a lot of anxiety because there's a lot of things out there that can make us anxious. And life is quite anxiety-provoking. So anxiety is a way that we learn to cope if we see that anxiety is telling us something, okay? So basically labeling it as a disease initially may give you a burst of comfort, but it's an empty gift. It doesn't help you move forward. It can be very deconstructing instead of constructive. It can be destructive instead of constructive. I said that wrong. Okay? Because we may end up doing the hard work of pushing through. So I could have just given up this morning and just given up on that task and just thought, I'm just not going to do that. It's just a waste of time. But it's something I need to conquer. I need to be able to do my work better and to be a better person and to be better at what I'm doing and to grow a bit, to grow more and to keep growing. But if I just saw that as, it's just part of an anxiety disorder, it's part of that's how I react, I can't control that, I wouldn't have been able to turn that into something positive. Okay, so rather use the anxiety as a description, rather and use it to understand and challenge yourself. That's what I did. I used that anxiety as I went through the 5 steps of the Neurocycle, which I described when I started this, to challenge myself. So I'm now challenging myself. I'm in a state today of challenge. I am challenging myself. I am going to conquer this thing that triggered my anxiety. I faced it full on. I'm not suppressing it. I'm going to use it to challenge myself. And if I don't get to exactly the goal that I want to achieve straight away, I'm going to keep on challenging myself. And I'm going to allow myself to feel that anxiety, but I'm going to keep on using it to challenge myself in a realistic way. Okay, so basically, let's look at the overarching tips of how I manage anxiety and that I believe will help you. So first thing is reconceptualize your view of anxiety. And that's this whole thing about seeing it as a warning signal in our mind, brain, body network, telling us something, giving us information to help us turn it from a destructive emotion into a constructive body of information to challenge us. Okay? So learn to start reading the message behind the signals. This is going to sound weird. Even get a little bit excited because that energy that I now have from doing this has I can energize the bunny. I can feel I've got creative energy. I'm already coming up with a plan. I already came up with a little solution, which I know I wouldn't have if I had let it just consume me or suppress it or see it as a symptom of a disease. So first tip, reconceptualize that anxiety as something useful. Reconceptualize that as your wise mind, your wisdom, the core of who you are, that essence, which is that wired for love essence, coming through that anxiety when you face that anxiety and giving you the energy to turn this into a challenge. Okay? One way of helping us to reconceptualize our view of anxiety is to recognize, and you've heard this before, but to really recognize and think about the fact that anxiety is a natural and adaptive response. So we're going to have things that make us anxious living in this world today. And therefore anxiety is a natural way to help us to adapt so that we can keep moving forward. Okay, so it's a natural and adaptive response, because if we don't adapt, we're going to crash. We're going to drop down. We're going to get worse. We're going to have mental health issues. So we want to use that anxiety to adapt. What is the adaptation that we need to make to move forward? Okay, so and another thing with this whole reconceptualizing is that to understand that anxiety comes from perceived threats. So we see something as a perceived threat, and that it's very often they're not as severe as they seem. So when we just let it consume us, because it's such a powerful emotion, the threat is perceived in a amplified way. So we want to kind of temper down the amplification. And the one thing the way to do that is, in this whole reconceptualization of anxiety, is to like really listen to what I'm saying here and practice telling yourself and wire that network in your mind-body network, that it's an adaptive response, it's getting us information, it's good for us, it's there to help us. If we face it, we find the information out of it, that this is going to then create constructed energy. And so that, when we say that and believe that and practice it, even if you have to spend 63 days just wiring that in, if you spend a minute a day for 63 days wiring that in to your network, you build it in, and that then releases this resilience anxiety. See? Resilience anxiety that is going to help you keep moving forward, because that's what we have to do in life. We have to keep moving forward. Anxiety not managed correctly will get us stuck and even move us backwards and go round and round and round, or whichever way you want to describe it. Round and round, going backwards, stuck, whatever. Okay? We want to keep moving forward. We want to create resilience anxiety. Okay? Second tip is learn to be okay with being uncomfortable. I didn't like how I felt. I didn't like that feeling. I didn't want to feel that feeling. I felt frustrated. I felt irritated. I wanted to lash out. I said some ugly things that I didn't like what I said. And I didn't like feeling uncomfortable. I wanted to just, move away from it. I was trying to think if I can get angry enough and get mad enough, it will go away. But no, it isn't. That didn't work. I had to sit with that uncomfortable feeling. It made me feel very, very uncomfortable. I didn't like it. But I sat there in the uncomfortable. We have to learn to sit in the uncomfortable and be okay with being uncomfortable. Because as soon as you're okay with being uncomfortable, suddenly you are comfortable with being comfortable. And it's okay. It changes. It's not so consuming. It's less consuming. Okay? So there's a great quote by John Green. He says, I just give myself permission to suck. I find this hugely liberating. And I did suck. I gave myself permission to suck. I really did suck the way I reacted. It was bad. And it sucked, but I gave myself permission. I allowed myself to do it, but I didn't stay there. Okay? And it doesn't make me a saint. It makes me someone who's struggling to get through anxiety. And that's why I'm here to help you. Okay? Because we all need to help each other. Okay? So this does not mean that you have to sit there shaking with anxiety and overstimulation, but rather it means that you remind yourself that it will pass. And these feelings will not last forever. So what you're sitting with now, it will pass. It will not last forever. And I can feel the difference. It's a couple of hours now, and it's getting better every moment. I'm feeling that tremendous frustration and anxiety, the anxiety and the frustration that I felt with it, and even a bit of anger, and just like, that this sucks, is so much less. I'm so much more calmer, I'm more peaceful, and it's giving me clarity. It's giving me solution. Okay, so part of accepting the uncertainty is going to help, because anxiety is often fueled by a desire for control and certainty. So anxiety, you want to get control, you want to get certainty. How am I going to get this? How am I for sure going to make this happen? But we can't do that. Understanding that not everything can be controlled, and that you can just maybe change your value system of what you think is worth chasing and trying to control. Why are you trying to control this, and how important is it really? Is it a nice to have, or is it a really important thing? Getting that kind of perspective, and understanding that not everything can be controlled and predicted. I mean, I just wanted to control and predict the situation, but I can't. I just cannot. I can only keep taking that energy and striving to improve what I do. And accepting, so therefore, as soon as I did that, the grip that it had on me, I felt gripped, and like, look at my hands. That's how I felt. Now, it went. I'm still a little mad, but the mad is now good mad. I'm still a little frustrated, but it's good frustration. I'm turning that into something that I can actually utilize to make this thing, to make something good come out of this frustration. And I hope to gain what I want to gain, but if I don't, the work on the way there is very valuable, and I'm going to focus on that. Third tip, so the first tip was reconceptualize your view that it's not a disease and it's information. Second tip, learn to be okay with being uncomfortable. And third tip, develop in the moment decompression activities. Okay, so a temporary distraction can be a really good thing. That will give you the space that you need to let your emotions calm down, which is really necessary when you feel overwhelmed with fear and anxiety. Okay, so it takes about 60 to 90 seconds. So even before you can do all the other great stuff, so even before you can reconceptualize your view of anxiety, before you can learn to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, you probably need to start with a decompression activity. And that's what I did. I actually there's no specific order. I got frustrated and kind of bursted out. I sent a text to a couple of people on my team. And then I actually just, for a few moments, looked at the sea, because I'm sitting in my place in Miami looking at the sea, and I just did some deep breathing. I just breathed in for 6 counts. I held it and I breathed out for 6 counts. And I did that 6 times in 30 seconds. And that just calmed down my blood pressure, and I could feel my heart reducing that pumping. So breathing in, if you count for 6, you count 6 breathe, you breathe in to the count of 6 and you breathe out to the count of 6, and you do that 6 times in 30 seconds. And at first it takes a little bit longer, but you'll get into the habit, but it drops your blood pressure. And if you need to do longer, you can do it for up to 90 seconds. You can repeat that. So I actually did that for 30 seconds, and then I just did some deep breathing for another 30 seconds, and then I did another 6 rounds. So that was what I did today. And so in 90 seconds, I felt so much better. Sometimes I'll just do 1 round, but it takes 60 to 90 seconds. So I know that I'm going to get that physiological response under control in around about 60 to 90 seconds. So give yourself that 60 to 90 seconds. Do some kind of breathing or something like that to help you do that. Okay, so then a couple of other examples of things that you could do. You could go spend some time. So let's say that you've done it 60 to 90 seconds, and let's say that like I had to get straight into another meeting very soon after and get some work done. But maybe you could just have, if you had a little bit more time, maybe you could text a friend, maybe stop and have a little cup of coffee with a loved one, maybe play with your dogs if you've got dogs, maybe just read a couple of pages of a great fiction book. I've always got a fiction book that I'm reading. I'm in a non-fiction, and always got fiction and non-fiction. Okay, maybe call someone you haven't spoken to for a while, maybe just disconnect from technology for a few minutes, and maybe plan to take part of today off, or finish a little bit early and go for a walk, or do something, give yourself something to look forward to today. You know, so in other words, just give yourself a temporary little something nice that will help you. If you can't do it in the moment, if you've only got 5 minutes before a meeting, like was literally what I had. I did that 60 to 90, I did the Neurocycle, I did that 60 to 90 minute breathing. First of all, I got mad and very anxious, mad, and etc. Shot off a text to a couple of team members, did my 60 to 90 seconds of breathing, and I did actually the full 90 seconds, did my little Neurocycle, and then I kind of got it under control, sort of making a plan, and went and played with my dogs, and this I did all in around about 6-7 minutes, and then I managed to get into my meetings and do everything else, and here I am now recording. So it's not going to be the same every time. Sometimes it takes me longer. Sometimes it's a bigger thing than what happened today. So there's no formula, but there's no like time frame that you have to do it in that time frame. Just to remember that it takes around 60 to 90 seconds to calm down that neurophysiological response, and sometimes longer. And you may want to, as you've exploded, then go into that breathing and then do the 3 tips. Reconceptualize your view of anxiety, learn to be okay with being uncomfortable, do a little bit maybe more of the decompression, and then move into a Neurocycle. Or you may have to be cycling between the two, between those tips and the Neurocycle. So find your formula that works for you, but it's going to be different every time as long as you build these 3 tips into your mind. I'm going to remind you again, reconceptualize your view of anxiety, be okay with being uncomfortable, use some decompression activities, and in whichever order you want there, take 60 to 90 seconds to get that neurophysiology under control, and make sure that you do a little Neurocycle so that you have the network being built that will help you convert that anxiety information that you gain into challenging yourself to move forward. I look forward to seeing you next time. I hope this has helped you. It's helped me talking to you.